absolutely a gut punch to anybody that works at a major media company because I think it does it sets a precedent that is going to be very difficult.
Well, yes, Chuck, and that precedent is going to be, how do I say, a pathway to accountability. As I have said on several occasions, guys, the enemy of the American people is, in fact, the U.S. media. That right there being the U.S. Industrial media complex, as you might would call it, if you've read some of Mark Dyson's books. But yes, the mainstream media. Now, guys, we've talked about MSNBC, and of course, you obviously saw a couple of people who work for MSNBC, and we already know about their struggles, but we haven't really spoken much about CNN and the other networks. So, it recently happened this past weekend, or it was reported this past weekend. Let me just go ahead and play the initial clip that I was going to play to start this thing out with, but suddenly decided to change my mind because I'm finicky like that. That ABC has settled on a lawsuit, as you guys can see, with former President Trump being George Stephanopoulos is now being forced to pay $1 million out of his own pocket to help cover the legal fees for $15 million that's actually going to be given to Donald Trump's presidential library, and it looks like a statue. Let me tell you what's going to happen as a result of all of this. That right there is the reason why it is that I'm making this video. But of course, we got to go through everything with a fine-tooth comb. So where do we start? Well, we start with what it was that actually got George Stephanopoulos in trouble to begin with. That right there being a segment with Nancy Mace. I'm about to play the full thing for you guys uninterrupted. I don't think that I'll get a copyright claim for this, but I'm going to play it for you anyways. So that way you guys can see exactly how much George Stephanopoulos wants to stay on that certain little word that, of course, the former president has been labeled as. Let me play it for you. And new president, but
repeated that again.
I think it's offensive. As a woman, I find it offensive. For my political choices, I've endorsed the man that I believe is best for our country. It's not Joe Biden. And you looked at the dueling rallies yesterday in Georgia. Laken Riley's family was with Donald Trump. They weren't with Joe Biden. The same guy yesterday that apologized for calling her killer an illegal, who was an illegal. And here you are trying to shame a rape victim. I find it disgusting.
I mean, you keep saying I'm shaming you.
You are. The question, it is.
How is the question asking you about a presidential candidate who's
You're asking a rape victim.
And there's no question about that. And you've courageously talked about that.
Because I've been raped. I think that's disgusting.
No, I'm questioning your political choices because you're supporting
me. You're
someone who's been found liable for rape. Actually, I'm not trying to shame you.
You are. That's exactly
what you're doing. You're not answering the question.
And I think it's disgusting.
Well, you're welcome to say that, but you have to answer the question. Why are you supporting someone who's been found liable for rape?
I just answered your question.
What is the answer?
He was not found guilty in a criminal court of law. It was sexual abuse. It wasn't actually rape, by the way. And E. Jean Carroll joked about all the money she's going to get and made a mockery out of this case. And I think that's offensive. There's a reason why women don't come forward. And when you have someone who says that they're raped and they make a mockery out of this civil court judgment, it's offensive to other women. It makes it harder for other women to come forward when another woman has made a mockery of it.
You said women don't come forward because they are afraid. They are afraid because they are defamed
and shamed
by those
like you're trying to shame me this morning.
They are afraid to come forward, as you said, because they are defamed by those who commit the rape. That's what Donald Trump has been found guilty of doing.
He defended himself over that and denies that it ever happened, but he was not found guilty in a criminal court of law.
Okay, now there's a lot wrong there. But I've already done a video on that same exact topic. However, what I want to stick with over the course of this video is the fact that this matter could in fact set a precedent. And you're going to hear me say criminally liable, civilly liable, whatever the hell is liable that it is. The fact of the matter is Donald Trump was never held criminally liable at all. So therefore the E. Jean Carroll situation for the most part is, well, all I got to do is just show you what this woman was like.
Most people think of rape as it is a violent assault. It is not.
I think most people think of rape as being sexy.
Let's take a short break.
Think of the fantasies.
We're going to take a quick break. If you can stick around, we'll talk more on the other side.
You're fascinating to talk to.
Straight up made Anderson Cooper uncomfortable there. Named her dog, named her cat Vagina. She talked about our fantasies, and it even made Anderson Cooper pretty uncomfortable. This right here is the woman that they claim that Donald Trump assaulted. Yet, it was a civil court in New York City which, as you guys already know, this is a place of kangaroo courts and very, very far left radicals and liberals. And of course, if you know about the Judge Engelrod, I don't think I need to go through all the details of that, but still at the same time, though, as you guys can obviously see, yeah, this woman had a few screws loose. By the way, Trump is also suing Ann Seltzer, the Iowa, I think it was the Des Moines Register, that polling, that news outlet. Of course, he's not suing Ann Seltzer because of defamation. I will briefly explain that after I played you guys this clip right here, which of course is a combo of him talking about Ann Seltzer and of course the situation with CBS, that were there being CBS News, and their mock-up on the interview that they did with Kamala Harris during the presidential campaign. I'll play that for you guys in a second, but here's the thing. The reason why Donald Trump is suing these people is because obviously these people are guilty of defamation. Seltzer's different. I'll explain that a little bit further here in a second. But it makes you wonder if there are more lawsuits on the way. Now, I did tell you guys at the very beginning what was going to happen, and we'll get to that more towards the end. But of course, like you guys know me, I got to play through all the stuff so that way you guys can kind of be caught up to speed on what's going on. But of course, I found the most fascinating segment out of all of this right here to be, let's just say, the segment between Scott Jennings and Michael Cohen. Michael Cohen, of course, is already on Donald Trump's crap list, and I'm pretty sure that, well, we'll get to him in a second. But the fact of the matter is this here. This lawsuit, this payout's probably not going to be the only one, and yes, accountability appears like it will be on its way, meaning that a lot of journalists who defamed the former president will probably be held accountable. But let me play this Ann Seltzer bit for you guys first, and then we'll get back to it on the other side, and we'll go through it piece by piece by piece.
Bringing one against the people in Iowa, their newspaper, which had a very, very good pollster who got me right all the time. And then just before the election, she said I was going to lose by 3 or 4 points, and it became the biggest story all over the world was election interference. You know, she's gotten me right always. She's a very good pollster. She knows what she was doing. And she then quit before. And we'll probably be filing a major lawsuit against them today or tomorrow. We're filing one on 60 Minutes, you know about that, where they took Kamala's answer, which was a crazy answer.
What Ann Seltzer is being sued for, well, not really her herself, but the Des Moines Register is being sued for, is they're being sued for a poll that was released like right before the election. Some people claim that it was designed to give Democrats hope to go out there and go vote because Trump had been up by like 7 or 8, then he was up by like 4, and then all of a sudden he was down by 3 in a state that he won by 13 points. Now, Ann Seltzer did quit, like Trump said, and then she would turn right back around afterwards and say, well, maybe the poll motivated Republicans to get out and vote. Maybe it's just a bad poll. No. Polls like that right there have a different connotation. You see, the reason why polls like this matter is because they're suppression polls. You see, the purpose of a poll like the one that Ann Seltzer put out where Harris was up by 3 in a state she was clearly not winning was to try to blackpill Republicans into thinking that they don't have a chance of winning, so why even show up and vote? Because Republican voters typically tend to vote higher in higher numbers on Election Day. The poll was literally released a few days before that, and of course a bunch of liberal commentators, a bunch of liberal streamers out there, made extremely bad election predictions, Kyle Kulinski being one of them, Namiki Kantz being another one, based upon that said poll. What it ended up doing was it ended up giving leftoids hopium, and of course a bunch of conservatives like myself. I went and voted before election day, still voted anyways. The reason why we still voted is because number one, we wanted to vote for Trump, and number two, because we've kind of broken through the whole veneer of suppression polls, so obviously it didn't work. The CBS bit has already been discussed, the 60 Minutes bit. That one right there probably won't stick, but still at the same time, of course, journalists are obviously a little bit fearful that Trump may be coming after them. I mean, just listen to Jake Tapper here in this 30-second clip.
This is wildly ridiculous.
Well, one of the things to keep in mind here is that Donald Trump feels like he won. I mean, this weekend, by having a settlement with ABC, one that many people did not think was going to come to fruition. They thought that this would end up in court, or that it would certainly not be a settlement in which ABC paid $16 million and issued a public apology, which was part of this, has been a situation which has empowered and emboldened Donald Trump.
He's not the only one. You've also got Brian Stelter, and you've also got not only Brian Stelter, but you've also got Jim Acosta, who I'm pretty sure is going to receive a lot of lawsuits from the president-elect. There's something that I left out there with Brian Stelter. One of the things that Stelter said in his bit with Jim Acosta was that if Trump gets negative polls, he's going to continue to sue over this. He spoke of it as if to say the president-elect is going to be running for president again in 2028 when obviously he's not going to be able to. He's not going to be eligible to do so. So it's almost like these people are still trying to pump up the narrative that Donald Trump won't leave office if he's president in 2028. I mean, it just seems weird to me how it was that they would throw that in there. But, of course, I'll link the full segment in the description box. Where it's just what I pulled from Twitter, and I figure I'd throw it in for piecemeal. But still, though, getting back to the person that we were talking to at the very beginning, George Stephanopoulos. George Slopadopoulos, whatever the hell you might want to call him. George Stephanopoulos has a pretty colorful past. I mean, a very colorful past. I mean, this was the same guy who went out of his way to, let's just say, protect the Clintons, as Megyn Kelly would remind us, back when he was running for president in 1992.
Which you know, because you invented it. Remember? When you created a whole command center designed to smear Bill Clinton's sexual assault and rape accusers so you could elevate him right into the presidency. The attorney representing many of Bill's accusers, and there were many, George, Juanita Broderick, Kathleen Willey, Paula Jones, Jennifer Flowers, to name just a few, said you and James Carville, at Hillary Clinton's direction, formed a so-called war room, whose purpose was, quote, to destroy any woman that would challenge Bill Clinton. You know the war room. They made a whole movie about it.
George Stephanopoulos. I'm Director of Communications. Bush was on the defensive. Another good night for Bill Clinton. 3 debates, 3 wins. I guarantee you that if you do this, you'll never work in Democratic politics again.
Such a tough guy. This attorney points out that you don't like to talk about this particular behavior, George. Maybe that's why you skipped it in your discussion with Nancy Mace?
Yes, very, very, very slimy, disgusting human being. Like I said, this guy's pretty daggone sick. And me personally, I think that having a payout or a settlement, me personally, I just don't think it's enough for someone like George Stephanopoulos, all right? It really and truly isn't. If you just go through his past, I mean, you'll see all kinds of crazy stuff. Carville, on the other hand, I'm pretty sure he's got some dirt on him that nobody knows about or nobody's actually exposed. But still, at the same time, we normally don't give the Raging Cajun that much of a hard time because, let's be honest, the Raging Cajun does make us laugh. But still, which brings us to Scott Jennings, which brings us to Michael Cohen, which brings us to the panel at CNN, who are definitely scared to death that they themselves are going to be forced to start doing some payouts. So let us go ahead and get to that.
It should be easier. You believe it
No,
should
I
be
think that
easier
media
to
has
sue
to
media
do their
companies?
job. They have to actually, they need to get the facts
But wait a
right.
second.
Because
Wait.
we were right. And that's
Okay, before we go any further, that was only a few seconds there. I want to go ahead and say this. Your job as a journalist is to get the story correct. Okay, I understand certain sources. I understand at the time maybe you didn't have all the information, but still at the same time, your job is to get everything correct. That is your job. Like I said at one point in time, I used to want to be a journalist, but then after a while, I start to see certain pundits in the sports world, and I see how it is that they follow narratives, preach certain narratives. Two of the worst ones that I've ever seen were Mike Florio at NBC Sports and Colin Cowherd. Of course, I've talked about him before, and I'll probably rant and rail at him to start the year because I did say we were going to go back to doing a little bit more sports content. And, of course, Colin Cowherd is a journalist that I absolutely cannot stand, and he, of course, made headwaves here recently for essentially saying that the NBA is collapsing the exact same way the Democratic Party is collapsing, yet Colin Cowherd basically toed the line on Fox Sports for the Democratic Party when he basically said that there was no crime in California and it wasn't that bad of an environment that he was in, even though he lives in an extremely gated, well put together gated community around pretty much nothing but white people. But still, though, the point is this right here. Journalists have gotten an extremely bad rap over the years for not getting things correct. And also not only getting things correct, but not even owning up to the fact that they got it incorrect, but also at the same time for basically proceeding on with witch hunts, which is exactly why it is that I believe that Donald Trump filed a lawsuit against ABC News and wanted some form of accountability. And I do believe that you will see more of these lawsuits to come. But whether they will all come from Donald Trump, I do not yet know. But let's get back to the segment.
always wrong.
It was wrong, but guess what else was wrong? All the polls of 2022. And none of those pollsters are
all wrong. They weren't.
I came up here on my platform and said that there would be a red wave back in 2022. I got that one wrong. Okay, so as much as I don't like Ashley Allison at CNN, she's got a point there. Okay,
So it wasn't the poll; it's the second, third, and fourth order narrative.
Listen. The number. I'm sorry,
and it's just
speech. So what?
It's free speech.
What about Scott? I mean, what about free speech? I mean, I thought that this was the Republican Party of say what you want. Let's debate it in the public square. Like, let's have the conversation. Now let's only have the conversation if you're 100%. Prescient and correct in that moment. It was a bad poll. It was a wrong poll. The media discussed it. So what?
Do you know what I'm so tired of, Scott? The number one cable news network, Fox News. The number one paper by circulation, the Wall Street Journal. Number 3 paper by circulation, the New York Post. Number 1 person on the radio, Sean Hannity. The number 1 person on the podcast, Joe Rogan. All of these people are Trump supporters. What media are you talking about that's anti-Trump?
You're not familiar with the anti-Trump media?
You're not.
Bitch, you work for the anti-Trump media. By the way, how many people watch the news versus actually reading a newspaper article? Seriously. And before Elon Musk bought Twitter, that was another news source that was heavily left-leaning. Social justice warrior even. Far left. ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, MSDNC, Bloomberg, the New York Times, the Washington Post, who, by the way, refused to endorse the presidential candidate because Bezos knew that it was time to change things up. He knew that it would be a good idea not to endorse a candidate because he wants to try to save a little bit of credibility that the Washington Post has. All these outlets, which, by the way, CNN actually puts out there. And, of course, people view CNN in airports and restaurants and bars and grills and all that type of stuff there. The fact of the matter is that the mainstream media news apparatus is primarily anti-Trump. I mean, seriously, they get fed Orange Man bad every single day. I mean, and some people, of course, love it like a pig loves slop. But to sit here and act like the Wall Street Journal, Fox News, which, by the way, Fox News was actually heavily anti-Trump once he left office, that right there is what we're going to complain about, even though you have the vast majority of media outlets on your side. These people are just pissed off that now conservatives are going to have control of the media and conservatives are going to actually be holding people accountable. I think that there's the real reason why is these people are so pissed off. Like I said before, take away the advantages from these people and you see that they are absolutely nothing. But let's get back on track.
Familiar with the fact that you guys control for everything
of
from
all
podcasts?
the things I've heard you say out here, that might be the nuttiest.
Scott,
I mean, believe me, there's plenty of anti-Trump media.
She's trying to pay you.
I'm trying
to pay conservatives.
what I'm basically trying to say is that you guys have taken over the airwaves. You guys have taken over the radio airwaves. You guys have taken over podcasts. You guys have taken over pretty much, and now you're sitting here complaining because all you guys do is whine and complain. Your entire raison d'etre is have grievances. You don't actually think about leading. You just think about having grievances against.
Why am I not surprised that Julie Radzinsky, another liberal, is accusing Scott Jennings of what she's guilty of? Because literally the Democratic Party is nothing more than a party of grievance. But let's get this last part.
And people felt like it was somehow deliberate. That there was a deliberate attempt.
That's the word of the day, deliberate. What happens when it was deliberate? That's the whole point that Donald Trump is trying to explore right now. What happens when that deliberate fake poll comes out and does actually alter? Now, by the way, you forgot about X, you forgot about Truth Social,
Thank you. Yes,
and so
thank
on.
you.
But what happens when it is deliberate? And that's why I believe that ABC ended up folding, because they did not want discovery to take place. Yeah. There's no other reason, as far as I'm concerned.
They folded because they wanted to suck up to Donald Trump.
Absolutely 100% correct from Michael Cohen. And I hate to agree with him because I don't like Michael Cohen, never have liked Michael Cohen. He's just as big of a liar as the other ones are. But Michael Cohen sees writing on the wall. He sees that it's very, very possible that he himself could be a target of lawsuits as well. They didn't want what was in discovery to come out. That right there is the real truth of the situation. They don't want to know who the hell's paying who. They don't want to know who the hell is actually pulling each other's strings. We've been talking about Cenk Uygur a lot here recently. We know he got money from Jeffrey Romer and Buddy Katzenberg back in 2017. And someone like, say, ABC, for example, they're also getting Disney money because Disney obviously owns them. You've got all these organizations that are getting paid a lot of money from a lot of places. Matter of fact, all these media organizations are only owned by like a handful of companies. I mean, I should probably do a video on how it is that all these companies merged. But the fact of the matter is that ABC did not want what the hell was really sitting inside the discovery, that right there being the actual meat of the case itself, to actually be exposed. Hence the reason why it was that they settled. I would talk about The View, but at the end of the day, I don't think The View is taken very, very seriously because they had some very interesting comments on this right here as well. Sunny Hostin and Whoopi Goldberg and them. And of course, they're going to probably turn on the Democrats here real soon because, well, there isn't really much use for them and people just turn on one another. You know, it's basically rats leaving a sinking ship. So what happens going forward? Well, more than likely what happens going forward is, like I said before, more lawsuits. Now, think about all the lawsuits that could be filed. Oh, let's see. You got Kyle Rittenhouse, not a whole lot of money in his pockets, got to take care of his mother. He's obviously got a father, too, and he's got to take care of his family. His life has been basically turned upside down. Oh, yeah, that right there is right. You've also got Daniel Penny, whose life has been completely turned upside down. Oh, yeah, that right there is right. You've also got Donald Trump himself. You've got people who work for the Trump organization. You've got Don Jr. You've got the kids. You've got people from the campaign trail. You've also got Hope Hicks, who was also destroyed in the media. You've got all of these people that are close to Trump, conservatives, whatever, they have been fully maligned, journalists even, who've absolutely had their careers destroyed, and they've also been defamed by the mainstream media. All of these people could, in fact, sue and get a pretty hefty paycheck. It would be absolutely beautiful to see. I think defamation suits are going to be flying all over the place. But what about the media itself? Now, guys, real quick, I want to say this because we do have some more videos to do this week, and I'm going to try to get that video on Jake's nephew out tomorrow to go along with this one right here, and of course the one on the mainstream media itself. But of course, I may change things up. I'm not sure yet. Here's what I want to say about this. Once you lose your credibility as a journalist, once you lose your credibility as a news organization, nobody watches you. They just cut you off. Now, if nobody's watching, you don't have ad revenue coming in. If you don't have ad revenue coming in, then you've got to downsize. If you're still not making any money, then eventually you've got to go out of business. I don't think the people at ABC News, I don't think the people at NBC, I don't think the people at MSNBC are smart enough to know how to scramble to save their networks. All of these liberal outlets are competing with Fox, or they claim that they're competing with Fox, but in reality they're not. They're competing against one another. Which one can be the most outrageous? Which one can be the most anti-Trump? Which one can slander the former president, the current president-elect, the most? And it seems to me like everything these people have been said has been jotted down, been written down, and of course they're all about to go to court over it. These people were never credible. But what really kills you in the minds of people is when you lose all your credibility and you're forced to pay for the actual lack of credibility. It's going to be a very interesting time. But we'll talk a little more about the media a little bit later on this week before you go on Christmas break. Make sure you guys please hit the like button, subscribe, share the video. Please tell me what you think in the comments. I'd love to hear what you guys have got to say. I'll see you guys later.